Museums have become a target ground for climate activists who have time and again used art to create awareness about the consequences of the climate crisis. And in the latest, two activists of Just Stop Oil, an environmental group, have been found guilty of causing criminal damage after gluing themselves to the frame of Vincent van Gogh's Peach Trees in Blossom painting at a London art gallery. According to the district judge, the 18th century frame, which is older than the painting itself, has been permanently damaged. These two activists are not the only ones who have been found guilty of causing disturbance in the country. In the UK, more than 30 climate activists are behind bars. Most of the activists, all supporters of the Just Stop Oil campaign, were held on remand after being charged with causing public nuisance or conspiracy to cause public nuisance in relation to disruptive protests. In fact, according to Just Stop Oil, since the start of October, around 700 of their supporters have been arrested. And on top of that, since they started their campaign back in April, around 2,000 arrests have been made. Moreover, the group has carried out various demonstrations across the country, as the campaigners say that they are only trying to fight for a better future and that they will carry on with the demonstrations because they are desperate to live in a world which is free of the impact of the climate crisis. Let's now take a look at some of these instances where the group has been demonstrating to mark the 31st day of their climate change protest. Remember, the group had sprayed orange paint on 4 central London buildings. The group defaced the Bank of England, News Corp headquarters, the Home Office and the MI5 building. Just Stop Oil saying that the buildings represent the pillars that support and maintain the power of the fossil fuel economy. They have also thrown soup over Vincent van Gogh's painting named Sunflowers at London's National Gallery. Wearing the t-shirts bearing the name of the group, the two activists, after pouring the soup on the painting, glued themselves to a wall.
What is worth more, art or life? Is it worth more than food? Worth more than justice? Are you more concerned about the protection of a painting or the protection of our planet and people? The cost of living crisis is part of the cost of oil crisis. Fuel is unaffordable to millions of cold, hungry families. They can't even afford to heat a tin of soup.
And in addition to that, they have smeared chocolate cake over a waxwork model of Britain's King Charles III at London's Madame Tussauds Museum. The demonstrators were demanding that the government should halt all new oil and gas licenses and consents.
The demands are simple. Just stop oil. It's a piece of cake. Time for words. This is time for action.
And with me on the broadcast this minute is our correspondent Alex Isat in London, who has been tracking those developments very closely. Alex, just for the benefit of our viewers, tell us more about where the UK government really stands when it comes to these climate demonstrations.
Well, at the moment, there is a public order bill that's still going through the House of Lords. It's in its second reading at the moment. It still has to go through a couple of other steps before it potentially is a bill that gets passed. But what it's suggesting is that there's going to be new laws on these protesters. They have invented a new law called locking on, which would mean that anybody who takes handcuffs and locks themselves to buildings, to bridges, that will be a crime. There's also another new law as well, which is called interfering with infrastructure. Now, this is going to be if there's anything that stops infrastructure. So on the M25, when we saw those protests, which caused loads of tailbacks, and of course, all railway stations as well. So if this comes into power, which could be if it gets pushed through within the year, it could be next year. The time frame is open because we don't quite know exactly what stage they're at. There are a lot of critics to this public order bill. A lot of people saying it's very authoritarian, and actually if the police do get granted these extra powers, then they could use them in a way that isn't quite beneficial to the wider society. For example, they'll have more stop and search powers, and if somebody is carrying, say, super glue, then they may be arrested for that and not actually going to go on and protest. So this is what will be happening within the court system at the moment. As I said, it's in the House of Lords. It's got a second reading, but it does have to go through the committee. It has to go through a third reading and to get royal assent before it can actually come into power.
Alex, the stance of the UK government when it comes to action against climate change also has been questioned time and again. When it comes to its commitment to actually stand by those climate promises that it has been making.
That's right, they are talking about net zero, and that's been a huge push from Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak and even Liz Truss. We're all in power. But the thing that really is sparking all of these protests is, well, it was the fracking. That's what started it off when Liz Truss said that we could frack again in the North Sea. And now it's the oil and gas licences that are given out. And Rishi Sunak is still giving out those licences, and that is what is affecting all of the protesters and people who also can't protest. There is a real climate crisis going on, and of course this is what is pushing these people to be demonstrative. And they want to say, they have said on their website, in fact, that they're attacking what people really care about, and they want people, because they want people to have that conversation. They want them to be frustrated and angry at the government, and they want people to try and make something happen. And that something is to stop all these licenses. But also, though, there is the other side of it. There are people who are quite critical of Just Stop Oil and their methods, because ultimately, whether or not we stop these licenses of oil and gas, there's no likelihood that we're going to be moving to renewable energy within the next couple of years. It's just not viable. So if these protests continue to happen, it's unlikely that anything really is going to be changing in the next couple of years at least.
All right, Alex, we're leaving it there for the moment. Thanks very much for joining us with those inputs. WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.